Today's video is about triglycerides. Triglycerides are a storage form of energy. So, whatever energy you consume needs to be used up immediately or it needs to be stored, because you can't leave that energy hanging around in your blood. You can't allow it floating around in your system, in your cells, because that energy can then be taken up by tissues and by other pathogens, and there can be a lot of damage. There can be a lot of oxidative damage if you leave that energy floating around in your system, or you can have infections because there's too much energy floating around in your system. So the body does what it does. So it takes that energy, and it, whatever can be used immediately, gets used, and then it gets stored either as glycogen, which is a form of carbohydrate storage, or it gets stored as fat. Now, when you're storing fat can be a really big molecule. It's very energy dense and it's a massive molecule, and it can't be transported across blood very easily. So it needs to be broken down into a smaller form, which is called triglycerides, and it gets combined with lipoproteins, which is what you get as LDL, HDL, VLDL, IDL, all of those. So today we are talking about triglycerides, and you get your triglyceride levels checked along with your fasting lipid profile. And it's important that you do fasting lipid profile because it gives a consistency to your result. So triglycerides will vary according to the time of day in which you are testing. It will vary according to what you have eaten the night before or just before the blood test. So which is why you have to have a consistent routine in when you test your triglyceride. So you need to have a 12-hour fast before the triglycerides, before the lipid profile is tested, and you need to make sure that you're testing it roughly at the same day, same time, each time you test your lipid profile levels. So that will then give you a trend. So if you're trying to reduce it, or if you're making sure that it is normal and you want it to stay normal, it's important that you have a consistent testing routine if you need to find out that your triglycerides working properly. Now, so like I said, triglyceride is a form of energy storage. It's a form of energy transport. So triglycerides, the levels of triglycerides will be influenced by what you eat, how much you eat, what time you eat it at. It'll be influenced by what you don't eat. So if you have a deficiency and you can't process energy, you'll have an elevated level of triglycerides. It will be influenced by what you can eliminate from what you're eating. So if you have constipation, your triglycerides and LDL can go up. If you can't process energy because of some hormonal problems, for example thyroid problems, you can have a high triglycerides. If you don't move enough, so if you've got a lot of energy in your system and you don't use it by moving enough, you can have a high triglyceride level. If you don't move frequently enough, so if you do 1 hour of exercise and then the next 12 hours you're sitting in front of a TV or a computer, or you're working, you're not moving, your triglycerides will go up. Now, like I said, triglycerides are a form of energy storage and transport. So if there's a lot of, if your body thinks that you need energy, it'll break down fat and release triglycerides into the system. Now, and if you don't use those triglycerides, your triglycerides will show up higher in the blood. Now, when you're under stress, your body thinks it needs energy, so it'll break down the fat that's in your system and it'll release it into the blood as triglycerides. So a high stress level will also cause your triglyceride levels to go up. If you don't sleep enough, your body is stressed, your body thinks it needs energy, your triglycerides will go up. So these are the lifestyle factors that cause your triglycerides to go up. Most people will talk just about the diet, but I wanted to speak about this too. So this was in brief what the lifestyle factors are that influence your triglyceride levels. Most people focus on diet, and the way they focus on it is wrong. So I'll go out and say it. So when you've got a triglyceride level that's high, the first thing you're asked to do is stop eating meat. It doesn't make any sense, because you're not eating meat 21 times a day, but you're eating grains 21 times a week. So you're eating grains 21 times a week. You're eating some form of grain 21 times a week, and you're eating meat or non-veg food twice, thrice, or 7 times a week maximum. So what do you think has more of an influence on your body chemistry? What you eat 21 times a day, or what you eat 5 or 6 times, 21 times a week, or what you eat 5 or 6 times a week? So think about it. So the things that actually cause your triglycerides to go up are an excess of energy consumption. And energy comes in the form of fat and carbohydrates. Protein is not preferentially used as an energy source. And if you're eating non-veg, and if it's mostly lean meat, your triglycerides are not going to go up. So even if it's a fatty meat, when you're eating meat, unless you're eating just the fat, if you're just cutting out the fat and just eating the fat, you are not going to be over consuming fat. If you're eating a fatty cut of meat with more protein than fat, you're not going to get a massive dose of energy from a fatty cut of meat. So you need to stop worrying about meat as the cause of your triglyceride to go up. You have bigger fish to fry. You need to reduce the amount of grains, refined grains, flour-based foods that you're consuming. You need to reduce the amount of sugar that you're consuming. If you can stop it, you're going to be really making some progress. You're going to have to stop consuming alcohol. Whatever small quantity it is, you need to stop consuming alcohol if you want to have a meaningful effect on your triglycerides. Fruit juices are especially notorious for increasing your triglycerides because it is mostly energy, hardly any fiber, and you're getting it in a massive dose. So the liver exports all of that energy into triglycerides, and that will hike your triglycerides. So that was about the diet. And if you want to reduce your triglycerides, you're going to have to reduce the amount of energy you consume in the form of carbohydrates. You're going to have to make sure that your thyroid is working properly. You're going to have to make sure that you don't have any constipation. You're going to have to make sure that you consume enough fiber. You're going to have to control your stress. You're going to have to sleep properly. And you need to make sure that you're getting enough micronutrients to process the energy that you're consuming. So glucose and fat, which is broken down into energy, ATP, needs B complex. It needs B complex to be broken down. And if you don't get enough B complex, all that storage is going to stay in your blood, but you're not going to be able to use it. You're not going to be able to use it properly. So this is one reason why triglycerides can go up if you have deficiencies in micronutrients. And I was giving you an example in the form of triglycerides, in the form of B complex. Now, when you look at triglyceride levels, you can have you can look at the normal range, and you can see that the normal range is shown as 150 to 180 depending on which lab it is. And if you see 150 to 180, you're happy, and your lab says you're okay, you're not okay. What the lab decides as normal is what the population is generally showing, and it is normal for a sick population. The vast majority of the population have triglycerides that are too high. And when the lab looks at all of these numbers and says most of them are at 150 to 180, so 150 to 180 is normal. 150 to 180 is normal for a sick population. It shouldn't be normal for you. You should be looking after yourself, and you should be bringing down your triglyceride levels. Now, how much is okay? The easiest way to calculate what is okay for you is to look at your HDL levels. Now, if your HDL level is 50, for example, you can let your triglyceride levels go up to 100. Ideally, your HDL and triglyceride need to be equal, but you can let it go up to 100. So 1:2 ratio is the best way, is the maximum that you can take as good for health. But ideally it should be 1:1. So most people are in the range of 1:3, and this indicates that you have insulin resistance, and this insulin resistance then puts you at risk for diabetes, gout, hypertension, strokes, heart attacks, cancer, all of those things. So looking at your HDL triglyceride ratio and making sure that it is less than 1:2. 1:1, 1:2 should be the maximum. Anything more than 1:2 is an indicator of insulin resistance, and you need to keep it below that level. So this is the HDL, triglyceride ratio, and that is what you should be using to see if your triglyceride levels are appropriate. Now, there are tablets that you can use to bring down your triglycerides. You can use them, but they don't seem to have much of an effect on your triglyceride levels. So before you reach for the tablets, I would rather you use the lifestyle measures that I hinted about in the earlier part of this video. There are people with familial hypertriglyceridemia. Those people will have blood levels, massive blood levels, 1,200 and even higher, and that condition is rather risky and you will need tablets for it. But for people who have triglycerides, a high triglyceride level because of their diet and lifestyle, should fix their diet and lifestyle first before they think of using drugs and other treatments to bring down their triglyceride levels. So I will not be talking about familial hypertriglyceridemia because it's not something I'm used to treating. But metabolic syndrome, which is hypertriglyceridemia that you usually see, I have a lot of experience in treating. Therefore, I'm talking about it. So if you got any questions, please post them in the comments so that I can make follow-up videos. And if you liked it, please press the like button, please subscribe, and please share to your friends who have high triglyceride levels, which is practically everyone. So thank you.